I stood by and allowed my wife to almost kill our son. I was happy she did it.
Part 5. I brought my daughter to the kitchen and gave her a bath in the sink. I found that he had cut her a third time on the sole of her foot. All the cuts were superficial. I cleaned her up and held her until she calmed down. I put polysporin and band-aids on her cuts. In our bedroom, I could hear my son screaming, calling my wife horrible names, telling her he would cut her head off and fuck her corpse. After a while, I didn't hear him saying anything anymore. Didn't even hear him crying out. I assumed that he must have been knocked out, but I could still hear her beating him. That went on for a long time, long enough for my daughter to drift off to sleep in my arms. I just sat at the kitchen table waiting for her to finish. Finally, she came out and sat down across from me. Her hands were swollen and red. Her face and arms were splattered with blood. Her chest was heaving. We just stared at each other without saying anything. After a while, I asked her, "Is he dead?" She looked back at me and answered, "I fucking hope so." I nodded. That was all there was to say about that. I understood how she felt perfectly. I felt the same. I didn't know what to do, so we just sat there waiting silently. Eventually, my wife started crying and went to go take a shower. I just stayed where I was holding our daughter. After a long while, I heard moaning and sobbing coming from our room. It turned out that my son wasn't dead. I went in to see how bad it was, and it was pretty bad. I've never seen a more merciless beating laid onto anyone before or since. He was lying on the floor, rolling around with blood leaking out of his face, lying in a pool of vomit. His nose was squashed flat out across his face. Both of his eyes were completely swollen shut and starting to blacken already. I could see that a couple of his fingers were bent out at weird angles, and he had pissed his pants. I think he must have been missing teeth, but I couldn't see any on the floor, and I couldn't see inside his mouth. His lips were all puffed up and swollen. From talking to my wife about it later, I know now that she had systematically beaten every part of his body, focusing heavily on his legs. She told me she kicked him in the groin repeatedly until her legs got tired and had kept beating his body long after he had passed out. I still didn't know what to do about our son. I didn't know whether to call the police or an ambulance, take him to the hospital myself. I honestly didn't have any idea what to do. After a while, I realized that I simply didn't care what happened to him anymore, and we decided to just let him live or die on his own. There was an in-law suite in the basement that we had never really used, and my wife, my daughter, and I just moved down there. We simply ceded the top floor of the house to my son and locked everything down, separated our lives entirely. There was plenty of food in the upstairs cabinets, enough for a couple weeks or more. He had a washroom and bedrooms to use. We had a washroom in the basement, small kitchenette, and a separate entrance, so we just stopped going upstairs. We just decided we were done with him. I figured we'd let his food run out and see what happened. Over the next week, we could hear him moving around upstairs sometimes. I think he just spent most of the time lying in bed recovering. I went to work, watching on high alert in case he attacked me in the driveway. But he never did. My wife stayed home with our daughter. She was never out of our sight. One night we heard him going ballistic, smashing things and banging. We didn't respond. He never tried to get downstairs or get near us, though. I think he was afraid that if he got near us again, my wife might finish the job on him. After 3 weeks down in the basement, we hadn't heard anything from up above for a few days, and I ventured upstairs to the main floor of the house. The place was demolished, and there was no sign of my son. He was gone. It took months to repair the damage he had done and get the main floor back to normal again. There was food and shit smeared all over the walls and broken glass on the floor, big holes in the drywall. He had ripped the place apart. He tore up the linoleum in a corner of the kitchen and emptied an entire foam fire extinguisher into the living room. I feel thankful that he didn't burn the house down with us in it. I'm honestly not sure why he didn't. The kid wasn't shy about lighting things on fire. After that, I lived in fear every day that he would come back, that he would ambush us out of the blue and try to kill us. We moved house about 3 years later, and I finally stopped being afraid that he would show up again, as now he had no idea where we were. I finally felt safe from him.